Hello, I am Michael Swim. As you probably already know, I was the first permanent European settler in what is now Clark's Harbour. The Mi'kmaq people preceded me by thousands of years. I was educated in England, the benefits of which allowed me to secure a decent living. The Cape Sable Historical Society, which evolved many years after my arrival, has produced a treasure trove of documentation of me and my descendants. Nevertheless, the details of my namesake in other locations are less detailed. For instance, Doketown in New Brunswick was home to many Swims, but I do not know the original person of my name. It could have been a brother or cousin, but I have never had communication with those settlers. In the United States, much the same occurred. The Swims in New York may have migrated up the Hudson River and connected with the Ohio River via canals and the Great Lakes. The Ohio would take them southwest through Kentucky, where many Swims settled and still live. On the other hand, they may have traveled overland via the Cumberland Pass and thence on to Kentucky. Nevertheless, I have no documentation as to what relative of mine took these routes. Now, would you join me and enjoy the following short anthology of the Swims on Cape Sable Island?
Michael Swim was the original settler of Clark's Harbour and first settled there at what is now known as Swim's Point. The Swim surname and many of its variants was first found in the German Duchy of Saxony, where the name came from humble beginnings but gained a significant reputation for its contribution to the emerging medieval society. Although it has never been verified, it is generally accepted by the Swim family that Michael's father, Albert, was a native of Germany, and his mother, Sarah, was an Irish girl. Michael is believed to have been brought up in England. It is recorded that he had a good English education. Born in England about 1754, Michael emigrated to the United States, arriving in New York in 1772, at the age of 17. This was just prior to the beginning of the American Revolution. In late August 1776, the British attacked New York City in an attempt to quell the American uprising. Their overwhelming military force swiftly overpowered George Washington's Continental Army. This initiated the British occupation that would last about 7 years. At this time, New York City was transformed into a stronghold for Loyalists, who remained faithful to King George III. Conditions in New York were quite difficult under British control. However, Michael would likely have found work there since he was well educated and was a clerk or accountant as we refer to that skill today. He would have had the resources to enjoy its many sights and sounds. There were taverns, parks, restaurants and a bustling waterfront. In spite of these early conditions, Michael would have maintained a somewhat comfortable living standard. But this would soon change for him and the many who chose to remain loyal to the British Crown. The British control over New York City ended on November 22, 1783, when American forces, led by George Washington, officially reclaimed the city. So in 1783, Michael and hundreds of other Loyalists sailed out of New York Harbor, bound for a new life on British lands, now known as Canada. After a few days' sail, Michael landed in Shelburne, while others went to St. John and Upper Canada. Late in November, 1783, Michael sails to Shelburne by ship from New York. It is believed that another ship carrying his brother was diverted to St. John, New Brunswick due to a storm on the Bay of Fundy. A foggy arrival, but he was now far from the turmoil of the American Revolution. However, was he ready for a new life in a developing land? Regardless of his fears, there he was, on a misty Shelburne pier. He immediately started looking for employment. Most businesses were near the waterfront, so he spent a lot of time there, walking, and inquiring about job opportunities. Michael was employed as a clerk by a Shelburne merchant, where he became a valued employee. He did very well for himself, and was able to live quite comfortably. Shelburne, at that time, was an extremely busy port, so there was lots of work for the skilled man that he was. One of his duties was to collect debts owed in the Barrington area. Since there were no proper roads at the time, Michael hired a schooner captain to take him to Barrington. One fine evening, they set sail into the sunset, and traveled overnight to their destination. While in Barrington, he secured lodging at the home of a Mrs. Thomas Doane, on Sherrose Island. Mrs. Doane had become a widow in 1783, and to support herself and her family, she kept a boarding house. During his stay with the Doane family, Michael fell in love with Letitia. They were married under a rose arch in front of the Doane house in October 1786. Their first home was located, not far from the Doane home on Sherrose Island, near the schoolhouse in Barrington Passage. Later, they moved to Bear Point where they lived in a small cabin. Presumably, Michael wanted to be near the fishing grounds. After a short stay at Bear Point, Michael sailed a small boat to Cape Island in search of a suitable location to establish his new home. In the late 1700s, there were very few European settlers on Cape Island. In fact, the Mi'kmaq people had been summer residents of Cape Island for hundreds of years. The Clam Point area is believed to have been a long-time Mi'kmaq clam fishing location. Besides Michael, other European settlers included Daniel Vinton at South Side, where Daniel's Head is located today. Centerville was home to the first McGrays. Reverend Asa McGray, the first Free Will Baptist preacher in Nova Scotia, settled there. Archislos Smith was also a prominent early settler. Not surprisingly, Newellton was first inhabited by the Newell families, and many still live there today. Meanwhile, back at Clark's Harbour, Michael became a successful fisherman. He initially built a wharf so he would have the means to transport materials from the area. It was a pretty basic structure with a nearby shed to store supplies. As time passed, Michael was able to clear more land and build a small log cabin where he and Letitia lived in relative comfort. His home was at the lower end of Clark's Harbour. The area where he lived became known as Swim's Point. With no children yet, Letitia likely spent many lonely days in the small home. Many times she would walk beside their home and watch Michael come and go to the wharf. On November 25, 1815, Michael was granted a license to keep a school. It is likely that the school was at his house on Swim's Point. By this time, many new settlers were inhabiting the island, so it was only fitting that Michael, an educated man, would open a school for the local children. On March 22, 1821, a Free Will Baptist church was organized on Cape Sable Island under the leadership of Reverend Asa McGray, who had come to live and preach at Centerville. On September 23 of that year, the church minutes state, received and baptized Michael Swim and let us swim. William Arthur Swim wrote that he was a man of high Christian character and possessed of an education and intelligence superior to the average man of that day. He also stated that Michael was said to be of quiet and stern manner. Michael and Letitia raised a large family of 14 children. I will now relate to you just a few stories of notable events regarding some of those children and their descendants. It was in February 1792 that Michael and Letitia's first son, Benjamin, was born. When Benjamin Swim was about 20 years old, the War of 1812 between Great Britain and the United States had broken out. Canada, at that time, was not an independent country, but nevertheless, some Canadians did help Britain in its war efforts with the United States. With British naval support, many Nova Scotian sea captains would attack American supply vessels in the hope of securing valuable goods. Hoping to find employment as a sailor on a ship out of Liverpool, Benjamin left home and traveled to that port. At first work was hard to find, but then one morning a man appeared at Benjamin's boarding house and offered him the position of second mate on a square-rigged vessel that was all ready to sail for the West Indies. Since he was promised good wages, he readily accepted the offer and was rowed at once to the vessel that was anchored in Liverpool Bay. A few days later, the square rigger headed south from Liverpool, with Benjamin and crew on board. The weather was sunny with a brisk northwest breeze, as they sailed for the West Indies. It was not long before he discovered that he had been deceived, and the vessel was actually a privateer. The captain immediately set sail in search of an American prize. They were soon successful in seizing an American schooner. The captain put Benjamin in charge of a small crew and placed them on the American ship. And with their prize, the Liverpool crew headed back to their home port. Without the knowledge of Benjamin and his crew, some of the Americans were hiding in the hold. During the night that followed, these men came out of their hiding places and attempted to overwhelm the Nova Scotian crew. Initially, the Nova Scotians fought to regain control of the ship, but in vain. One by one, the crew members were overpowered by the Americans. Eventually, all were taken prisoner and were offered an ultimatum. They could swear allegiance to the United States, or be thrown overboard. Faced with this decision, each of the crew finally took the required oath. All except Benjamin. He said he would willingly be put in irons and taken as a prisoner of war, but he could not swear allegiance to a country that was not his. We have to remember, Benjamin's father was a devout loyalist and had likely instilled in Benjamin a deep mistrust of Americans. So it is not difficult to understand his stubbornness in the face of danger. When the men found that they could not persuade him to take the oath, they threw him into the sea. His hand found something to cling to, and he again pleaded with them to make him a prisoner of war and spare his life. Once more he was offered the opportunity to take the oath of allegiance, but he still refused. In answer to his refusal, an axe was brought down on the hand that was grasping the vessel and he fell into the sea. With his other hand he was again able to grasp a support and once more pleaded for his life. The former offer was repeated, but Benjamin's answer was still, "I cannot do that." Again the axe came down, and Benjamin fell into the sea. This was to become Benjamin's final resting place. This is the first recorded drowning of a Swim family member. There would be several more during the ensuing years. George Smith, Swim, was drowned in 1888 after falling from a skiff near the horse race, just offshore from Cape Sable. He was 65 years old. In 1970, 15-year-old Teddy Swim drowned in a boating accident in the waters near Clark's Harbor. Reverend Albert Swim, Michael's fourth son, was born in April 1800. For the first part of his life, Albert was a fisherman. The first Free Will Baptist Church was located at the corner of Main Street and the Swims Point Road. You can still find many old gravestones there. Albert was immediately interested in religion and was baptized on the Swims Point shore. In 1830, Albert was licensed to preach and became ordained a few years later. He preached at the Free Christian Baptist Church at Swims Point until 1845. He also preached sometimes at the old meeting house in Barrington. Located on a wall inside this heritage building, an old portrait of him is currently displayed. Albert passed away in February 1890 and is buried in the older part of the cemetery at Atwood's Brook. Herbert Swim and his brother, John Swim, were born at North East Point on Cape Sable Island in the latter part of the 1800s. As young men they moved to the nearby fishing port of Lockeport, where they founded the well-known and successful fish-buying business known as Swim Brothers Fisheries. The business flourished for many years, however, in 1939 it attracted national attention when the Lockeport lockout occurred. The Lockeport lockout refers to a significant labor dispute in Lockeport, Nova Scotia, in the fall of 1939. Over 600 fishermen and fish handlers were locked out by their employers, Swim Brothers and the Lockeport Company, for attempting to unionize. The event was a major test for the Nova Scotia Trade Union Act of 1937, which gave the right for Nova Scotia's fishermen to unionize. It gained national attention when workers marched in protest and held the picket lines for 8 weeks. The event was widely covered and remains an important part of Nova Scotia's labor history. The events were suburbly documented in Sue Calhoun's book, The Lockeport Lockout. The Battle of Passchendaele was fought during the First World War from the 31st of July to the 10th of November 1917. The battle took place on the Western Front, in Belgium, where German and Allied armies had been deadlocked for 3 years. On the 31st of July, the British began a new offensive, attempting to break through German lines by capturing a ridge near the ruined village of Passchendaele. After British, Australian and New Zealand troops launched failed assaults, the Canadian Corps joined the battle on the 26th of October. The Canadians captured the ridge on the 6th of November, despite heavy rain and shelling that turned the battlefield into a quagmire. Nearly 16,000 Canadians were killed or wounded. The Battle of Passchendaele did nothing to help the Allied effort and became a symbol of the senseless slaughter of the First World War. A young man from Clark's Harbour joined the Canadian military and sailed to Europe to fight for his country. His name was James Hibbert Swim. On November 7, 1917, he died in the Battle of Passchendaele, along with 3 of his Cape Island buddies, Basil Duncan, Earl Goodwin, and Earl Kenny. Waldo Swim was the first son of Allen and Belle Swim of Clark's Harbour. As these old images show, he was a typical, bright young boy. In 1920, Waldo was amazed at just seeing an automobile. So it is no surprise that on a warm June day, Waldo and 2 of his friends were thrilled to be able to go for a ride. Early in the afternoon of Wednesday, June 16, 1920, George Dooley took the 3 boys for a drive in Fred T. Nickerson's car. As the car passed the Swims Point Road, George lost control of the vehicle while going down the hill. It veered into the ditch and flipped over. Just before the crash, Vaughn Swim, a cousin of Waldo's, managed to jump clear from the vehicle. Another passenger, Roby Kenny, was slightly injured about the head. The driver, George Dooley, was seriously injured about the head and shoulders. Sadly, young Waldo was not so fortunate. He sustained major head injuries and died about 30 minutes after the crash. The Halifax Evening Mail reported that the Swim family had the sympathy of the entire town. At the time, there were only about 30 cars on Cape Island. His gravestone inscription reads as follows: "And yet how sad it seems, that one so young for whom the best of life had just begun, should be so taken. Yet the Lord who rules us all hath thus decreed it, and his will be done.
Hello again. I trust you enjoyed this short trip down the swim memory lane. These were but a few noteworthy events that occurred since I first arrived in New York in the late 1700s. However, if you want a more detailed accounting of me and my descendants, I would recommend you read Island People by Margaret Messenger, published in 1998 by the Archislaus Smith Historical Society. I realize that a video like this can only skim the surface, and that there are many more stories like these. But alas, we are bound by time and other constraints that put limitations on what I can relate to you. I have enjoyed this first revelation of our swim history and look forward to many more adventures to come. In closing, I sincerely ask that you cherish our heritage and promote our accomplishments. We have been on Cape Island for over 200 years. May you all prosper and remain proud of our name. Long live the swims of this place and of those in far-flung places. Thank you, and as my German father would say, Danke und auf Wiedersehen für jetzt.